Hello, everybody. My name is Ruben Murray. I'm the president of the Irish Second Level Students Union. Thank you very much for coming. This is our live stream. The new document that was put out by the department. It brings all the specific information about loads of specific detailed points around the Leaving Cert, calculated grades, accredited grades, and the written exams, and the Leaving Certificate applied. I'm doing this through a Zoom account, and it's being broadcasted to our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and also our website, I believe. So you can get us at anywhere there. It's at ISSU for you. We're going to go through the document and go through it page by page in a student-friendly way, because these documents are very long. So we're going to give it a few minutes to give a couple of other people to join. But while we're waiting, I'm just going to go through what exactly the ISSU is. So what is the ISSU? Simple, we're the Irish Second Level Students Union. We're the national representatives of students. We work at a national level to lobby the Minister for Education, the government, and other stakeholders such as the Principals Association or the teachers' unions. We work together to represent the student voice and make sure we are equally represented and our voice is heard. We are the National Students Executive, which means we're elected every year by students at the annual assembly. So that just lets you know who we are. In relation to how the Leaving Cert has gone, we've been working with the Minister, with the department. We've been in negotiations to try and deliver choice, clarity, and compassion for students. And as we saw, the choice of accredited grades is now being offered to students. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming along. Just to give you an idea about how this evening is going to go, I'm going to share my screen and go through the document. There's going to be a lot of writing. I'm not going to read it all. We've been working throughout the day, reading it in depth. We've played a role in actually drafting this. We would have sent in submissions. We would have received a document and given it back feedback. So we've been working on actually having this guidance drafted. And you would actually see a lot of what we would have recommended has been in the document. So that just shows that the department is working. But there's also going to be a chance for you guys to ask questions. Now, I'm aware that you're able to put in comments on the stories that currently I'm not able to see them. So if you want to ask any specific questions, we will have a section for that. You just send it as a message to our Instagram. Our Instagram is at ISSU for you. So just for those of you who have joined new, my name is Ruben Murray, and we're going to get started. We know this is a very worrying time for students. We're trying to give you the information, and we're trying to give it to you simply. I'm going to share my screen now. So if you bear with me just one moment. Screen, start now. Okay, so what do you do if you want to go and see what all the new information is about the Leaving Cert? How are the mocks going to come into it? What's going to happen? Well, first thing you can do, you can go onto Instagram and you can go to our Instagram page, which is ISSU for you. And then you just click our link tree there. So the link in bio, you click that. And up here comes up Department Guide on Accredited Grades. This is the new document. I've already downloaded it. So I'll just bring it up here. So I go into Files. Now, what is happening? What is accredited grades? How is it going to work? So it's very simple. Students have a choice between accredited grades and writing this and taking the end of year written exams. Accredited grades are essentially just calculated grades. But the one difference is between now you have the chance to work, to be part of building your grade and actually have an impact on what it is. It's not just your teacher. You now have a chance to be part of that. And that's the key difference here. Students can choose to sit the exams. They can choose to receive accredited grades. They can choose to do both. More importantly, you can choose maybe, oh, I don't want to sit all my exams. I just want to sit 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. You don't have to sit all of them. And you can choose to sit specific ones, but also you can receive accredited grades. So there's a real choice given there. We already worked with the department to try and get it so students could receive their accredited grades before the written exams, so that they can make that decision. Unfortunately, we just weren't able. We really worked with the department to try to deliver that, but we weren't able. But now here, this is a document and we're going to go through it. Most importantly, it's important to remember, this is a good document. There is a lot, it really shows that listening to the student voice and knowing what the challenges we are facing. And so I'm going to go through it now to give you all the information that you know, and so that you can also let your teachers know if they're confused, what's happening, what's going on. So this is a 27-page document. The department there's a lot to it. We're in the middle of breaking it down so it's easier for students to understand, and that will be out as soon as we can do it. So I'm just going to slowly hop in. But the main thing here is that as we can see, there's a lot here. They see that the challenges that students face this year when school closed, that a choice was needed and it was necessary. That's the main points that are covered here. But now we move in the written exams. How are they going to work? What exactly is going to happen? So if you want to sit your written exams, you need to complete your oral work, you need to complete your coursework, and you would sit your papers as normal. The key difference is we already saw that there was extra choice provided on the papers. We saw that done in September, and it was done again in January. We campaigned for there to be more choice made again following the closure of schools, and we succeeded in that. That was something the Teachers Union of Ireland did as well. So there will be more changes made to the exam papers by reducing the number, but the time for the paper is going to stay the exact same. And so this means there's going to be more time for students to actually complete it. That's what this section here, section 2.1, essentially says, and there's no need for us to go through that entirely. So that's it broken down in its bare bones. There's going to also be extra information about each specific subject. So say you're wondering, how is home ec going to work, or how is music or metalwork going to work? That's already that's going to be covered in more guidance, more documents like these that will be put out, and we'll put out a student-friendly version. And so that information is coming. But the exams start very simply on the 9th of June 2021. So they're going to start as normal. The important thing is that further subject by subject guidance, it's going to be released on the week of the 22nd. So we can be thinking about that. The additional component, this just means oral work, practical work, and projects, etc. So students who want to sit the exams need to complete their coursework. So that's their practical, their project. That's what that means. But if you want to sit accredited grades, you don't have to complete the coursework. You don't have to complete the project. And the difference is, though, your teacher can look at the work you've already completed with the project and use that to help form their calculated grade or your accredited grade. So that means the work you've already done, it won't be put to one side. Teachers can look at that and it can help them, bring out their real point. Now, the practical exams will not go ahead. They will not go ahead for PE, construction, and engineering. The difference here is that the marks for these practical exams will now go into the project component. So say my project was worth 30%, that 10% will now go into the project. And this is because of the same skills. But the music practicals will go ahead. There's going to be more detailed guidance about that. We need to make changes, make sure it's safe, but that will go ahead. So that's very important to know. The next part here is the actual oral exams. So if you want to sit your written exam, for example, French or Irish or some other language you're learning, you should sit your oral. The reason being, well, it's worth 40%. You can still only get the other 60% of your mark if you take the written exam. So that's really important to say. Now, the orals are not going to be run going to be run on weekends, after school, or over the Easter break between the 26th of March and the 15th of April. That's what the timeline schools have been given to work with. The difference here is that they've been told they should keep it to a period of 5 consecutive days. So this means they can't be doing it over 3 weeks. They should keep it to 5 days and 5 days only. So that's important to know, and it gives you that clarity you want to know. Now, how is the oral going to work? As you can see, you can read it here. Essentially, a teacher is going to conduct the oral. It will be recorded. It won't be done online. It will be done in person. It will be done to a standard that is safe for students in relation to COVID-19. And it will be recorded, and then it will be sent to the SEC to mark it. Your teacher will not mark you. The SEC will. There'll be external people. The SEC is the State Exams Commission. There'll be external people who come in, look at it, and actually mark it to that standard. So that's an important point to note. Next, the portal to register for the exam. So this is important. The actual portal to register, that's going to open on the 8th of March, and we'll come back to that just a little later, I believe. But on the 8th of March, you're going to have to go onto a portal and choose, do I want accredited grades or do I want the written exams? You can choose to do both and all that. But the key part here is, we know that's very early, that's for the orals. But it will reopen in late April, early May, so that students can review their choice. So that's important to know, and do remember that. The one important thing is if you sit an oral exam, you cannot, it won't be counted towards your accredited grade. If you sit an oral, it can only go towards your written. A teacher can't use it, look at it, or consider it when making your accredited grades. That's really important for everyone to know. In relation to leaving certificate applied, earlier in the year, there was advice published for these students. There have been adjustments made, and there'll be extra guidance coming out on that for those students. Now, one of the things that's very much on the minds of all of us is accredited grades. How is this going to work? There's a lot of information here, so bear with us. We're going to work through it. We're going to do it in an easy, understandable way. And anyone who has any questions, get ready, because in a few minutes we'll have anyone who has a question, just send it into our Instagram and we'll answer them live here. Now, there's a lot of information here. We're not going to go through the bits you don't need to know that's essential, but essentially this accredited grade is calculated grades, and your teacher provides an estimate. So your teacher and school, they work together to provide an estimate. They use tests, work, evidence of learning is the correct term, of what you've done over the last 2 years that shows your ability as a student, and they'll create an estimated grade. What will happen then is that will go to the State Exams Commission, and they're going to put it through a national standardization process, which will then arrive at what your mark is. But what goes into that? How does the national standardization work? Can they use mocks? Are teachers allowed to give us 10 tests? No, they're not. And we're going to go through that now. Now, there are three there are three situations, as you can see here, of people who will get an accredited grade. One, in addition to the exams. So any student who wants can apply for it and get it. Students who are not able to sit the exams at the scheduled time. So if you are at very high risk of COVID-19, if you're required to self-isolate or restrict your movements during the written exams, well, then the accredited grade, that's a backup there for you. You can receive that, and that'll make sure you get a qualification. Then when it is not possible to take the exams, so for example, say an examination center, there's an outbreak of COVID-19 and the whole center, and not the whole school, but the whole center needs to shut down, and those students will only receive an SEC accredited grade. But there's a backup there, there's a contingency, so they will receive it. Now, the next stage, as we saw here, you will make your choice on the 8th of March. Now, that's coming up very soon, as we do know. So this students have 1 week to do this, where you can choose. I want to get an accredited grades at this subject at this level. I want to sit my exams in this subject or this level. This isn't, it's very early, but it needs to be for the orals. The key and really important thing here is early May to allow students, and you'll confirm. That's important. It gives students that chance to change their mind, and that's something that's really good to see that's in there already. What is an accredited grade? You can go through this and read this. I showed you can get it from our Instagram, and we're going to have a student-friendly version out. But as we see here, as I explained in these two bullet points, the first bullet point, a school estimation of a percentage mark. Oh, pardon me. I'm sorry. A school estimates a mark, and then the State Exams Commission will use national data to standardize it to make sure everything's not going all over the mind. And now, what are the principles? We don't need to go into this. These are the sort of founding principles around this. And then the key features, again, we don't need to go into this, but the next part will be very important for people. And that is this part. So the teacher's estimation. What can teachers use to calculate your grade? And what exactly are they allowed to look at? What things should they exclude? Because there are things they are meant to exclude. So the first thing, a teacher cannot consider your behavior when doing your accredited grades, whether it's good or bad, your character, appearance, social class, ethnicity, or absent from school, if you were missing from school due to an illness, or you were sick during summative assessments, like end of topic tests or end of year exams, and you were sick or you were isolating from COVID-19, that cannot be taken into account when calculating your grade. And that's what's outlined in that first paragraph. It's also noted that in the final lines, which is really important, that the department stresses that how they work, their work habit, their effort, their homework, their participation or attendance or personality, and that shouldn't be confused with achievement. For example, if I'm a really messy worker, or I'm a bit crazy and I don't necessarily I'm not to like the highest standard in how I organize myself, but on the exams, on the tests, I score very highly. What matters is my achievement, not how I get there. And that's an important distinction that's made by the department there. Now, as we move on, what can a teacher use? This is all very jargony, and so we've broken it down. A teacher can use any class test or assessment, tasks or works they've given you, questions, or house exams, such as Christmas tests, summer exams from 5th year and 6th year. Okay, so that's from 5th year and 6th year. Teachers can use and should use any evidence of learning, so how you learned during online school in 2021, but it's noted they need to take into account that some students were not able to fully engage, and teachers should be mindful of this. Now, 5th years, you were learning online in 5th year. Sorry, 6th years, you were learning online in 5th year in 2020. There was a long period there. Now, the school and the teachers can use that evidence. They can look at the time there, but they need to exercise great care. And that's from in here, great care, where online learning was different for a number of students. The department is very much aware of the challenges that were faced in that time, and that's particularly noted in this document. So that's something that's really important for us to know and remember. And where a student has already done coursework or project work, for example, I did DCG. So say my DCG project, it's not done yet. I'm not going to sit the written exam. I just want to get my accredited grade. A teacher can look at what I've already done, what I've already completed, and take that into account when calculating my grade. So the work I've already done is not going to be ignored, that's really good. That's really important. The next point that's very important is where a student has special education needs. If you've applied to the RACE program, you maybe have a scribe or a reader. The teacher should take that into account, how that would better your mark in the exam when calculating your grade. So teachers are to take that into account as well. So that's something that's very positive. And then performance on any coursework, if you're in LCA or tasks, that's to be taken into account as well. So again, what key information sets? So this is following on, what other information can they use? What's going to happen when we go back to school, and what can they actually look at? So as you see in this second paragraph under 6.2, in the first line, you can see that they can use end of term reports. So how you would have done over the year and how that's done in end of term for 5th and 6th year. It's also, they do say a little caveat that there's been different conditions there. A teacher's record of in-class work that was completed, end of topic tests, continuous assessment, or especially in your languages, oral work, so your listening exams or your oral assessments, presentations, project work, or coursework that was considered. Now, on this final paragraph, this is a very important point. Teachers should reach an unbalanced judgment, yada, yada, yada. That's very important. And then when we get to that final point, an occasional dip or peak in a student's performance should not be treated as indicative of overall approach. This means, say I had just a really bad day. I have shown myself to be a really high achieving student, or maybe just H3, that's where I was always getting, and I showed that I was strong consistency. And then one day I do very poorly on just a class test and it's down on the floor. And that's an occasional dip. Or the opposite, say I just get a H1 100% or an occasional peak. That should not be treated as, oh, this changes everything. And it should be taken into account. It should be a holistic approach. So if you've had a bad day, that can't be there to just, take out students either. Now, again, what are the characteristics of the assessment selected? We're aware this is very jargon heavy. We're working with the department to break it down into a document where you can find it all. Now, here's the important bit. Are additional assessments required? In other words, what's going to happen when we go back to school? On Monday, when students are back in school, what's going to happen between now and the end of the year? Am I going to be given 100 tests and am I not going to do anything without being tested? No. We worked specifically with the department to try and have it that students would not be overassessed. And the department heard that, they understood that, they listened to it. And as you can see here on the second paragraph down, it says overassessment must be avoided. And that's really important. They can't overassess their students. The second thing is that we don't want that this is suddenly whole different section of the school year. So what it says there is teachers should work with students. They should do in-class work, tasks, tests, and assessments. Should be as close as possible to what have been done in a normal year with students. It should be familiar to students. We don't want it to just change all of a sudden. And it's very important that feedback is given to students, such as a mark or a percentage, a descriptor of achievement, and that's clear, showing what work is done by students and to the level that it's at. So that's important to remember. Also, here's the important part. Should a teacher set additional assessments up to the 14th of May, these assessments should be considered proportionately with other forms of evidence of a school's learning over the programme. We've had reports of schools who have said, okay, we're going to do a test and this test is 40% of your accredited grades. They can't do that. And if school does that, and they're breaking with the guidelines here, that can't be the way. If you do tests between now and the end of the year, your teacher cannot solely base your mark on those tests. And that's not fair, it's not right, and it's against these guidelines. What they should do is they need to look overall at all the evidence they have from last year, before this year as well, and the tests, and take them all together and proportionate to one another. So these tests, they're not intended to be the be all and end all. But we've had reports of schools where possibly maybe they're doing a test every week. And if I have 7 subjects, that's a test every week. That's 7. Between now, how many? 10 weeks? That's 30 tests. That's not fair. That's 70 tests. That's not fair. So how are we going to work around that? Well, the department realized this. And so what they say, what kind of assessment can teachers use? And it's here. If a school is doing an in-class test, teacher designs, it should be no more than one lesson, so one class. So if your class is 40 minutes, it shouldn't be longer than 40 minutes. If your class is an hour, it should be no longer than an hour. Now, if you have a double, the teacher can't do a 2-hour test if you have a double. So that's why it says there, a teacher can do in-class test that's designed by the teacher, but it can be maximum of 1 hour long. And here's the key part. There can only be a maximum of 3 class tests that can be done in a subject between now and the 14th of May. That's very important. So a teacher, if they're giving you more than 3 class tests that are entering and being considered, they're breaking with these guidelines. It's not fair, it's not right, because otherwise students would be drowning in tests. And so they can do a maximum of 3. And these tests can be oral, they can be oral, or they can be practical, or they can be written. And so that's really important to know. Now, what's the other key points around this? So teachers should ensure that a student's education that they're learning, it's not disrupted by students preparing for tests, or they have frequent tests happening all the time and they need to prepare, and this will stop students learning. That's not the aim of this, and that should not happen. That's really important. As we see in point number 2, there needs to be success criteria. So they can't just administer tests and not give any sort of mark or show what's right or what's wrong. There needs to be a success criteria there. The important point is 4 and 5. It should not be influenced by any parent, guardian, or student. These tests are not to be influenced by them, and we have a responsibility in that as well. The next point is it should not be influenced by perceived assessment practices of other teachers or other schools. It's your teacher, it's their decision. They should not look at what other teachers are doing and have that being overly influenced, or look at another school and see how they're doing it. It's the teacher is professional, they know their class, they know what they're doing, and we need to trust them. And so that's important. This paragraph at the bottom here, this is very good. This is very important. And what it's saying is, for students with special education needs, that the work and the tests that these students need to complete, it should be inclusive of these students. There should be accommodations made for these students to achieve the same effect as the changes or accommodations they would have received in the written state exams. For example, if you had movement breaks or whatever. Now, they can't be the exact same. They don't need to be, because it's a different context, but they should achieve the same effect. And the technical wording there I see is that it should remove any barriers that might stand in the way of a student being able to show their ability. And so that's very important. That's very important and great and good to see from the department, because it really recognizes that we need to make sure that these students are catered to as well. Now, what assessments should not be used during this time? What can teachers not take into account? Now, this is past, so over the last 2 years, but also into the future. So, for example, tests that are corrected by a student themselves or by a partner in class, so peer assessed. And so if they give me a test and they swap it, and that's how it's corrected, that's not fair, that's not right, and that shouldn't be used. The next part is short written class tests. So a class test that's of less than 1 class period, so shorter than 1 class period, that assesses a limited aspect of learning. So break that down. What does that mean? It's basically a test that it only looks at a very narrow or specific area of the course. For example, spellings or vocab. At the ISU, like I see that as like quotes tests in English. They're not fair. They do not show a student's performance in the subject as a whole, and so they shouldn't be used either. Now, the next one, the one we're all working for, and we were speaking with the department on this. We had this information, and we worked with the managing bodies as well. Mock examinations. Some of you call them pre's. Examinations, or in other words, any exams that involve a full class group or year group that sit a written exam under exam conditions, they are not required and they are not recommended, and they cannot be used as evidence for accredited grades. They cannot be used as evidence for accredited grades. And now this is very important. The period following the return to school, teaching and learning should be used as an opportunity to maximize the time between students and teachers. That's the department saying that on the return to school, we should encourage and try to use that time, and the mock exams aren't necessarily the best use of that. Now, looking away from this document, we at the ISSU, the mock exams, we're recommending they don't go ahead in schools, that students aren't forced to, but most importantly, and this is, they can't use the mock exams for students' results. For the students' accredited grades, they shouldn't be there. So that's really important. They're not to be included, and that's from the Department of Education and State Exams Commission, not the ISSU. That's from the top. Now, specific considerations. So these are the specific points, the nitty gritty, and the parts that are niche or apply to specific people, but they're just as important. So answering through Irish. If you answer the exams through Irish, you get 10% of what you didn't get. It's a bonus. And so and this is one of the things we looked for and worked on, a teacher should take into account if a student wants to choose to sit the exams in Irish, or if they indicated they would sit the exams in Irish, that is taken into account when calculating an accredited grade. If you're in a Gael school or a teacher that teaches through Irish, it's expected that they would internalize that, meaning that they would already have it in their mind and in their calculation. Now, fairness and equity. This is something that's really important and really important we communicate it. This talks about the unconscious bias teachers may have in relation to students' classroom behavior. I don't know about you, but I was a bit of a troublemaker in some classes, but that should have nothing to do with my calculated grade, and it won't. Their knowledge about students' socio-economic or family background. So if you're from a disadvantaged household or your family background is different, that should not have any impact. By being alert to this source of unconscious bias, so by bearing it in mind, teachers can focus objectively on the information. Where there's a real conflict of interest, for example, say I'm a teacher and my son is in the class, I can't give a calculated grade to my son necessarily. There's a difficult there, such as a close relative. Well, then the teacher will tell the principal of that, and another principal or another teacher will sort of work with them and present oversight on that to ensure that there's no conflict of interest arising. So that's important to say there. Again, we come back to reasonable accommodations for students with special education needs, which sees great representation in this document. And it's, as we mentioned earlier, if you had a reader or a scribe, the teacher will base their estimate for that student, bearing in mind the likely performance, so how they would have performed with that. Now, students who are new to the class. So say, for example, I am new to a class, I've moved in from a different class, or I've moved in from a different school this year, and I've only been in school, the actual in-school teaching for 3 months. Well, what this means is that that teacher should go and talk with your old teacher. They should try and get any information they can. If they cannot, where it's not possible, that teacher will then do their best. But that's important to know, and that will answer a lot of questions. Now, for those of you who are repeat students, that's a very specific year. So your teacher can take into account the work from all your years, so from your 5th year, from your first 6th year, and from this year repeat year. But the important thing is that clear weight and particular attention should be given to your 2021 exam year. This shows your ability this year. If a teacher needs, they can consult with your old teacher, and if they're still unhappy, Sorry, no, but they can consult with your old teacher, and that's really important that that's there. And it takes into account that there was years of learning. The only difference is the period of school closures in 2020, that period of time, that's very difficult, and where a lot of students had a lot of challenges. So there should be particular mind given to that. Now, there's still a lot of information here, so bear with us and don't go away, and have all your questions ready. We want to answer them. Share this. There's still a little bit to go, but there's still some really important information, so don't leave just yet. Now, students who are studying a subject outside of school. So for example, say I'm doing French outside of school, or I'm a homeschool student. I'm being taught by my parents in preparation for the Leaving Cert. So the State Exams Commission, they're going to really try work and make sure that as many people can be given accredited grades as possible, including those who are being homeschooled or studying one thing out of school, but there needs to be clear, robust and fair evidence to show and how an estimated mark can be shown. If it's not possible, and after every reasonable effort has been made, it won't be issued, but there's going to be more information on this. There's going to be more documents, and we're working on them as well. So that will be pushed out. But the important thing here is the difference is last year, if you are a homeschooled student, you couldn't receive accredited grades and you had to sit the exams in November, which meant you could not go to college last year. That was a real negative. It was a few fallback on all of our parts in the advisory group. Unfortunately, it didn't seem like there was an alternative, but we campaigned to try find one. But the department have realized that we've made improvements, and now if you can't, well, you can sit your exams and you can move on to your college. You can move on to the world of work. You can move on with your life this year. And so this is a really important difference that we're facing. Now, after this, your teacher is going to take all that into account. They're going to look at that, and they're going to then give you an estimated mark. What happens then is that the teacher, so say my English teacher gave me a mark and they gave me, say, 79%. They do not rank their students. Last year, we saw they had to rank their students. So Ruben is the 5th out of 20 in the class, and they would have had to show how good or bad I was. That doesn't happen this year. No class rankings. They just have to give me a percentage at 2 decimal places, so 75.03. Now, no two students can be given the same mark, so no students can be given 75.03. But the next student can be given 75.02, etc. So it just shows you. And that's how it's going to work. What happens then is when the teacher has arrived at the mark, they're going to meet, say it's my English teacher, they meet with the other English teachers in the school, and they go through school alignment process. This is where they check and they make sure that everything is fair, that it's all and has a sort of may result and looks and it's fair across the board. That's what that is. And it's to give a layer of checking to make sure that everyone isn't getting H1s in a subject where that's never been seen before. Now, the important part is after this point, it then goes to the principal. This is oversight, and the principal will sign off on all of them. And they'll sign off on the marks and make sure they go on ahead. But the important point here is that the teacher can return the data. So if they say that there's inconsistencies, that this doesn't seem right, this is not reflective of something, if there's clear evidence that a student's mark is inconsistent with the school's information on that student's achievement. So for example, if I consistently show I'm a H3 student and I'm failed, well then a teacher and a principal picks up on that, then they can move it back, and that's shown in section 6.1. But also if there's if there's evidence of a lack of objectivity, so if there's bias or discrimination that seems to be shown against the student, principal can highlight that and say, I want this reviewed and I want this taken back. And then the teachers look at that again, and then they make their final decision. But that's an important safeguard that's put in place and an important responsibility on the principal as well. And so we need to trust them. Next, what's going to happen is that those marks are going to be taken to the State Exams Commission. They're going to just be given to the State Exams Commission, and then we're going to go into a national standardization process. What is this? This is the part that would have created a lot of controversy last year. But this is where the State Exams Commission look at national data to make sure that it's reflective, it's fair, that not everyone is just being bumped up, that there won't be this massive grade inflation, which people say we saw last year, but we only saw a 4% increase across the board, which isn't even a full grade, but it's to make sure that we don't see that overinflation. And so this is a really important stage. But what actually is going to go into this? What information are going to they take into account? Well, first off, there's going to be no class rankings, but there will be no school profiling either. So they won't look at how your school has done in the past. And this was taken out last year, and it will not be going ahead this year, which is really important. They will look at junior cert results. Now, before people worry, this is something that really worried me, but when it is explained, it's nothing to worry about. What it is they don't look at individuals and junior cert results. They look at a class group, so the whole group together. They look at all the junior cert results together. It's called aggregate data, and it shows the sort of ability of the group as a whole. No individual's junior cert results will be looked at. More importantly, no individual's junior cert results will have an effect on their individual result. That's not how it's going to work, and so that's something that's really important. But it gives something that can reflect and show the standards. If anyone has any questions on this, we're happy to go into it. And it's not here, like there's going to be no predetermined sort of grade that will be put on students. So this is a really important stage, but it really makes sense. And that's what's going on. There's going to be further clarity on this that we're hoping to work with you guys through. The only other thing is that they might look at past leaving certs. So what would have been normal in other years for the amount of results to see, and they can take that into account when standardizing. Now, on the issuing of results. So come results day, and the day we all, normally we would have gone up to the school, received a brown envelope and taken pictures and all with our results. But last year, unfortunately, that wasn't there. But the important thing here is you will receive a certificate on results day. And it will have, you won't know, say I did both accredited grades and the written exams, I won't know which was which. I will simply have my certificate, and it will show what my best ones were. This is because each are equal. A week later, I'll be able to log on and I'll be able to see which ones were accredited and which ones were actually written marks. So this is important, and it means that we can see that information ourselves at the end of the year. Now, the great part about this point now is the appeals process. We need to discuss this. With the written exam, if I sit my written exam, I can appeal it as normal. So I can challenge it, I can view my script, I can have someone recheck it, and the mark can go up or down. That appeal is there as totally normal. That's great to see, especially with the year that's in it. Now, with the state exams, accredited grades, and now the appeals process, you can appeal the grade, but it's only a process, which means it only looks at the actual clerical. So whether there was a mistake in recording the data, it won't necessarily actually challenge whether or not there have been then you can't actually go to a teacher and say, I don't think this is what should have been. So it won't change unless there's been a mistake made in the actual recording of the data. That's how it was done last year, and it's how it will be done this year. Now, there's only a few other points. Student-teacher contact. So this is canvassing. This is where a student starts maybe talking to a teacher and trying to influence a teacher, trying to get them saying, look, could you bump up my grades? And that's not fair. It's not right. And it can't happen this year. And that's really important. It's not fair on teachers. We need to respect that and take responsibility. So as we can see what is written here, there is not, there can be no influence, pressure or coercion by a parent, student or guardian, and that has wants to influence a calculated grade. If someone does that, then their results can actually be held back, and it won't be passed on, it won't be given to them. So there's very real serious repercussions on this. There's going to be more information about this, but that is a possibility there. And that's it, everyone. So thank you very much. Now we're going to go into the questions part, where people can send in questions now. If you just send a question into our Instagram, which is at ISSU4U, I have it up here, and I'm going to answer any questions that come in, and so we can actually give you the individual information you want. And I already have some here. I have over 20 here trends we see. We'll try to go through them as well. So This is from Claudia. Can I talk to my teacher about if I should drop to ordinary level or get advice on doing written exams or not? So we don't have specific information on this. We're trying to work with the department to get this specific question answered. In relation to asking, should you sit the ordinary level or higher level written exam? Yes, but whether or not to sit the exams given your accredited grades, there's a real challenge there. This information is not out yet. We're working for you to try and make sure that this information is there. And this is the question we are asking and that we've posed to the department, and we're working through to find the answer. So as soon as we have it, we will communicate that. I hope that helps. I'm going to go into all the others. So if you have any questions, send them into @ISSU for you on Instagram, and we'll go through them. Now, will the oral They have already to start into our bio. If you just search it, changes made to the 2021 state exams, you'll be able to find it. I'll add in the link into our bio later on tonight, and hopefully that will help. But there have been changes made. There won't be additional ones made, but there have been changes made. The next question is, if you receive predicted grades for UCAS, is this a good indicator of your grade you're likely to receive? I can't answer that. If a teacher has, this is a whole separate system. It's a whole separate range of things. So they should be taken as separate to one another. The work between now and the end of the year, that's what the accredited grades, that's the work you will be completing. And so you shouldn't assume anything is what I would say there, but I'm not the correct person. Will junior cert results be used at all? Yes, so as we said, aggregate. So they're not going to look at, for example, Ruben Murray's junior cert results. They're going to look at the group and take it all together and use that as, okay, this is the sort of ability of the group as a whole. So they won't look at my individual results, and my individual results aren't going to affect my results at all. It takes the group as a whole. And it's needed, it's necessary to make sure that there's some kind of statistical moderation there to make sure it's fair and that we don't see a massive explosion in points. And that's why it's brought there. And I hope that answers your question. If you have missed exams before Christmas earlier in the year due to an illness other than COVID-19, would this have an impact on your accredited grades? Would the tests completed from March 1st be the main data, or would the missed tests impact negatively? So as we saw there, absence from tests due to an illness. It didn't say COVID-19, it said any illness. That needs to be thought of and taken into account. And also the important thing here, it said punctuality. So whether you're there or not, in the past, that's not necessarily how you achieve, but it's important that between now and the end of the year, you should be in school, you should be working, and you need to show what you're made of. You can't just leave school now or not do any work. School's not over, the exam process isn't over. You should need to still work and be part of building that accredited grade. And so that's really important that we hammer home. In some of my subjects, we have only done 2 tests, Christmas test last year and the Christmas test this year. There will be work between now and the end of the year that they will use to help calculate your grade. Now, the next part, can an external candidate also get accredited grades? Yes. Now, it depends. If you can show data, if you can show evidence, if there's someone who can actually give all that for it, then you can receive an accredited grade, and the SEC wants to work to try and make sure you receive it. One moment, I'll just be 5 seconds. Pardon me, I just had to plug in the laptop. But you can, but there's going to be further guidance on that. We'll get that information to you as soon as the department releases it. But in the event there is none, you might not be able to, but the SEC, anyone who can, they will. So that's important to know. The next question is, hello. Okay. All right, we'll move on to the next one there. But if I take the accredited, lose those additional marks that I would normally if I'd sat the oral. No. So if you take accredited grades, the teacher will take the oral into account. The oral will be its thing that they will say, okay, how would this person have performed in their oral, how this person had performed in their coursework, how they performed in the written exam. They will all come together to form your estimated grade. They're not going to ignore those parts. That's going to be very specifically brought in mind, and we're being very clear on that and making sure that those students are rewarded and they're recognized. So you needn't worry about that. That I'm seeing this have already been answered in earlier ones. Teacher says you have to do practicals even for accredited grades. Is this true? No, you do. The construction practical exam is cancelled, even for people who sit the written exams. Now, your teacher can do a practical test with you, one of those assessments that's over one class. And it should not be taken solely. It should be taken to all the other work, but they can give you a practical to inform. But forced to sit a practical exam, an oral exam, or a written exam. If you take accredited grades, you do need to work between now and the end of the year to give the teachers the actual material and evidence. So it's really important that school isn't over. Next we have, okay. And what is considered sufficient evidence for an accredited grade? If you do not have a kind of teacher, I did French for my junior cert and I'm doing it myself for leaving cert. So what the important thing here, I can't answer that specifically, that guidance is not out yet. So the big document I went through is one of them coming for students who are doing a subject outside of school. Thus we're working, we have a chance to influence, and we're here to fight for students, and we're going to try to do that. For the home ec booklet, which is already marked by the SEC for predicted grades, does my teacher take this mark or use their own? You're going to have to allow me to come back on that. This was something that was addressed. I'm afraid we will come back to you on that. But coursework that's already been completed, teachers can look at that and take it into account. I don't know how the specific on that, so wait and we'll get some information for you and we'll try to get back to you with that. Okay. If my teacher says she believes that if a student sits an exam and they get a result that is totally less than the accredited grade, the SEC may drop the accredited grade accordingly. Is that true? No, they're totally independent of one another. I'm just going to read this again to make sure to reinforce students here, but also to make sure I heard it right. If a student sits an exam and they get a result that is way less than the accredited grade, and the SEC then can drop the accredited grade accordingly, no, that is not going to happen under any circumstances. That is not the case at all, and that will not happen, and we won't let it happen. But the SEC and the department, they don't want to see that. That's not what they're trying to do. No, that's not the case. But if it ever looked like it would be the case, we would make sure that it would not be. So that's important. Could you talk a bit more about music practicals, the home ec journal, and the LCV project deadline? So the coursework that's to be finished by now in the end of the year. So say I want to sit my written exam and I have to complete my LCVP project or my home ec journal or etc. I then will have to do that. There's going to be new deadlines put out to students for when they need to have this work done. That they do need to have this work done if they want to sit the written exam. Now, the SEC are saying we're very mindful of the time that has been lost. Equally, we don't want to eat into the rest of the time this year. So that is going to happen. I hope that answers your question. But in relation to the music practicals, so they will go ahead, and there's specific information that's not released yet, and that I'm not able to communicate here, and I hope you can understand that. But they will go ahead, and there's going to be specific information on that. And as soon as we have any of this specific information, we're going to be putting it out now. Also, I'd ask everyone who's still here, share this, that students know we're here. And also we're having a town hall on Sunday where we're having a large Zoom call and putting students into breakout rooms with their regional officers where you can ask them directly any questions you want. So go register for that and also help us reach as many students as possible. Share it out. Let students in your school and area know that this is happening. It's in just there in our Instagram page. It's a town hall event and our registration link is in our bio. So be sure to share that around and let students know that they can get their questions answered. My construction teacher says we have to finish the project, not the day exam, even if you choose accredited grades. Is this true? What I've been briefed on by the department is that no student has to finish any component. If they receive accredited grades, you do not need to finish the coursework component or the practical or the written in the school year, but that's what I've been instructed by the department. So that's what I've been briefed on. And do check that document. I don't have it in front of me now because I was sharing it on the phone, but that's what I've been told. And that's what I've been told from the Department of Education. And this is from being briefed alongside like the ASTI, the NAPD, the Teachers Union of Ireland. We were all getting the briefing from the same person at the same time. So that's the information I have. Is it okay for teachers to do multiple quick tests in class? For example, my home ec teacher is continuing to do quickfire short question tests the last 10 minutes. Is this allowed? So if you look at the information we put that I showed you on that slide and go to that slide, look at it, read it, but it says short class tests that last less than one class and have just a short span. So they're just looking at something very narrow, such as spelling or vocab tests. They can't be used. So if it's like a vocabulary test, it can't be used. But a teacher can do class tests, but they can only do 3 between now and the end of the school year. They can only do 3, and that's in the guidance. And we're going to be publishing this. We're going to have a document, an Instagram post, and it's all going to reference this document. I'd encourage everyone to go try read that now that you have an understanding. And if you have a worry, communicate that, show this document and say, look, I'm confused. And we'll hopefully have more information about how we can help you, how you can contact us, etc. this coming Sunday at the town hall event with the live Q&A. So be sure to be there. And what is, okay. If I get a H3 by my teacher, is there a fear my grade will drop to a H4 by the department? This is a worry. Through the national standardization process, it can drop. For example, I would have received a H2 in biology, and I got marked down to H3. It happens. It's a national standardization process. Students are marked down, and students are marked up as well. There would have been subjects that I would have gotten. got calculated grades last year. I could have gotten a mark in 1, and then it could have been raised up a couple of percent, and maybe even over. Maybe that percent could have taught me over to the grade, or might not have. But the grade can change. The grade you receive, the grade your teacher puts down, isn't necessarily the grade that you will receive. It might be, but the national standardization process is there to make sure it's fair, and so it can change. Okay. Will we see the same level of downgrading as last year? We don't know. Unfortunately, we just don't know. I'm not able to answer that at this moment in time. We don't know yet. Is there a limit to how many subjects you'd be downgraded in? No. That's not what we saw last year. We did see that a number of that there was only a small percentage of people that were downgraded more than 2 grades. So we did see that, but we don't have that information, and there won't be a guarantee on that. Okay. All right, I'm going to. Okay, will teachers be looking at each student's grade independently of each other, so they won't have to rank the class? So it wouldn't matter how many H1s or H2s they give out, as long as they have backed them up with legitimate results. Basically, will they be asked to rank, or will they feel like they have to rank the class? No, teachers do not need to rank the class. Now, the rest of your question, I'd like to get that specific, but teachers are not being asked to rank their students. In theory, a teacher, they just can't give a student the same mark. So a teacher could give me, say, 50% they could give the next student 49.99%, the next student 49.998%, etc. But they will not be asked to rank students. How will the standardization process work? So the Department of Education will work with the SEC. It will be the SEC who decide the standardization process. And what they'll do is they'll use a statistic model. So this is an algorithm, and they have a contractor who comes in, and they'll use the information, the aggregate junior cert data all together. They'll use the past results from other year and any other information. This is not finalized yet, it's being decided. And there'll be information given out to us and to you guys as soon as we can get it. And that will explain how that works. Okay, so wait a few more moments. I'm going to just refresh this to see if any other questions come on in. So that seems to be all the questions that we have. Any other questions we've had seem to be just repeats of the others. So, we see here, why is school profiling not allowed? Because it has the student's location. The school a student goes to should not dictate how they get their results. And where I go to school should not have any input as to how I actually do in my leaving cert, and it doesn't, and so that's why it wasn't taken into account. And the department made a decision to take it out last year, so they weren't going to put it in this year. What's the story with the technology practical project? I have to just check now, but I do believe the technology practical is cancelled. The technology practical, the points and marks for that are going to now be included in the coursework if you choose to sit the exams. With accredited grades, they're going to give you a mark for your practical anyways. They're going to take that all into account. Will the orals be held by our teachers? Will you be able to not sit an exam on the day of the exam, even if you choose to sit the exam? Well, you can do that any year. In a normal year, if I am registered to sit biology, English, maths, DCG, or business, I can choose not to turn up for my business exam. I'll get a no-show. I'll get no grade for it. Now, I don't see why it'd be different from this year, but that's not confirmed yet. That information, I can ask that question and have a direct answer. But in a normal year, that's how it's done. But you don't get a mark. You don't even get it gets put down as a no-show. So that's important to note. Will the orals be held by our teacher? So not necessarily your teacher, but it could be. It could be a teacher in that school, or it could be a relevant qualified teacher in a nearby school that can be used as well. That's what's been communicated to us. If you have not even started the geography field project yet? So there's going to be more guidance issued on projects if you wish to sit the written exam, in which case you have to finish your project component. And if you want to just receive accredited grades, you don't need to finish the project component. So that's what we've been communicated. And equally though, your teacher can do work with you and do project work to try and assess your ability and see what you would have gotten. But that and further information, the specific information about specific subjects, that's going to be addressed. Later in further guidance. So we're on nearly an hour now. I am going to close up at this point. And if anyone hasn't had their questions answered, and I'm afraid we're not going to be able to go through all the questions that are here, though a lot of them are just duplicates. So any questions from this hour, we won't be answering in text because we just have so many coming in. But I want to say thank you to everyone that's coming on, and to let you know that we're the ISSU, we're students, and we're fighting for you. We are here working day and night, and I mean day and night, for you guys, working with the department, the other stakeholders, to try and make sure that the best deal can be made for students. We have done good work in relation to, there has been a choice now offered students this year. Now, as we look to the return to school, there's more anxiety, worries that we want to allay, and we'll be communicating on you guys with that over the next 1 or 2 days. There's important information here, and we're working to try and make sure, one, that students know whether or not schools are safe, more importantly, to ascertain schools are safe. And also to make sure on the return to school that students feel that they're in an environment that they won't receive COVID-19, and a large part of that is communication, and we're working with the department on that. I want to say thank you, everyone. We really appreciate your help and your support. And if there's one thing you can do to help the ISSU, it's to send around the page, share the posts, more specifically, share the posts for the town hall. Let the students in your school, the students in your area know what's going on. Let the students who are following you on Instagram, let them know that while there's a lot of people who are vocal on this, the ISSU, we are the people who are in the room. We are the people who make submissions, who have negotiations with the department, with the teachers' unions, and have a real input. We don't make the decision, but we have a chance to influence it, and a very direct chance to influence it. We are students, and we are in the room, and we are fighting for you. Thank you, everyone. My name is Ruben Murray, and I am the president of the Irish Second Level Students' Union. Good evening, good night, and take care.